Hello and welcome to Diplomacy Talks podcast. My name is Mahir and I'm your host for this series, where we're talking with the top experts and professors, ambassadors and diplomats about foreign policy, diplomacy and international relations, regional and national development. In this episode, we talk about vaccine diplomacy in the COVID-19 pandemic. Now I'm in the UN house in Sarajevo, and in this episode, I have a great pleasure of talking with our guest, Dr. Fabio Scano, acting World Health Organization representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Hello, Dr. Scano. Thank you for this opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you, Mahir, to come to the UN House and to have me as part of this conversation.
Dr. Scano has 20 years of experience in public health program management and policy development in several areas, from diseases control, outbreak response, to regulations. Dr. Scano took up many important assignments with the WHO headquarters in Geneva and in the field including South Africa and China. Since January 2020, Dr. Scano has been at the forefront of the WHO COVID-19 response in China first, and since March 2020, he provides support to the World Health Organization European Office on COVID-19 response. Since February this year, he is acting representative of WHO mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina. First, how do you feel in Sarajevo and Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction. You went through all my professional life. And again, thank you for having me here. I'm really glad to have this conversation with you. And I have to say that since I arrived, I feel like home. I mean, it's a beautiful country and with very warm people. Every country is different. I had a very international life. So actually, I left my own country long ago. Of course, my mother and my sister are still there, so I go back. But every country is different. The beauty is the difference, and definitely the warmth is unique also in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Mm-hmm. Do you like the food?
I like the food too, and the traditions. Of course, we have been through. I arrived in February, so you know that there have been also some limitation of movement to protect the health of the individuals, but also of the society. And I hope that in the future I will explore more of the country, the traditions, and the food for sure.
Tell us something about World Health Organization mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Sure. The World Health Organization country office in Bosnia and Herzegovina was established in October 1992 to provide support to the country authorities, mostly by providing evidence-based and sustainable public health intervention to improve the health of the individuals, but also the health of the population. The way that WHO operates is to build institutional capacity in the matters that are crucial for the health development of the country. And we do this also in partnership. And a crucial aspect is also to catalyze change based on international recommendation to advance the country's health reforms that, of course, are even more crucial in a time of COVID or in the post-COVID time.
What's the role of WHO in the fighting on COVID-19 pandemic globally and in Bosnia region?
Thank you for giving the opportunity to elaborate on a WHO mandate, but also specifically what we do in the country. Generally, you always start from global level to country level, but I take a different perspective, and I start from the Bosnia-Herzegovina level and the support of the country office, and of course also the regional office and global. At the beginning, we didn't know much about this pandemic, especially in the last January, February, and March. And then definitely WHO supported and worked hand in hand together with the authorities in many aspects. These were, of course, to provide the policy recommendation, but also financial support. And the support was multifolded. I can tell you that at the beginning, we provided 2,199,000 800 pieces of personal protective equipment. Of course, I did my research and I memorized the number. But it was crucial at that time because there was a lack of
It's
of,
like mask.
Exactly, like mask, the thing that you see the health workers wearing, that they were crucial to protect our health workers, to take care of the patients. But also other materials in terms of test. At the beginning, if you didn't test, you didn't know what you had.
We in Bosnia, we have like a problems with tests. We don't have.
We don't have, the capacity of testing expanded immensely, but at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody had problems with testing capacity. And we shipped over 132,000 test kits to detect COVID. But also in terms of lab support, we provided and donated 2 sequencing machines. One is based in Sarajevo and the other one in Banja Luka, that are the machine that allow to sequence the genome of COVID, but not only, also of other viruses, of bacteria. And so it's important because it's not just for COVID. Is a machine that it will represent resilience of the health system and will strengthen the health system as such, not just for COVID. And will allow the country to identify what are the so-called variants of concerns. And this is crucial, especially going forward, because we have always to prevent the transmission and in the community of variants of concern. So to detect them first and then to prevent transmission. Another aspect of the collaboration was definitely the planning at the beginning and throughout to assist the national authority with the pandemic preparedness and response plan according to international guidance, but also to provide support on surveillance to identify, the cases, but also to test them, to how to do it, all the policy advices around these areas, on how to identify the contact tracing, that it was crucial when we learn how to control these diseases and to quarantine patients. So it spans across all aspects of what were the medical, but also the societal aspect for dealing with COVID. At global level, definitely this has been one, if not, I think, the most challenging health crisis that the world had, at least since the founding of WHO, that is the 7th of April of 1948, so it's almost 100 years. And definitely WHO took up the call from the country for assistance. And we did this basically based on science, on solution, but also solidarity. In our conversation, I will repeat this, not concept, but really it should be our leading motive for going forward of solidarity, especially when it comes to vaccine diplomacy. But it was been crucial throughout the pandemic. Immediately after 2 weeks, then the virus was first, we learned about the virus. The WHO issued guidance on several aspects. First of all, on how to detect the virus, because you need, it's a technical guidance in terms of laboratories that you need, but it is also on how to do, the triage, guidance for how to treat the patients with the evidence that was available then. So it was a fast collecting of the evidence and translating that into recommendation and continuously updating guidance on the laboratory, on surveillance, and on other aspects. We did this not alone. We did this by mobilizing and harnessing experts from all over the world. And that is also what allowed to fast develop vaccine, treatment, and diagnostics. And what you might have heard of what is called ACT UP, that it was a global collaboration to advance the development of both vaccine treatment. And specifically on a vaccine is exactly where WHO set the bar very high, because from the beginning, basically what WHO did was, okay, we need a vaccine and we need it fast, because you know that generally it takes almost 10 years to develop a vaccine. But these are basically the criteria that you need to develop a vaccine, or what is called the candidate vaccine. What you're referring to are those candidate vaccines that they follow WHO recommendation on what is needed to be a candidate vaccine, that they are at different stages of development. Some are in what it's called clinical trial phase 3, that basically are the ones where we have data on humans. And following that, the manufacturers can apply and submit to WHO the request for emergency use listing. What does it mean? It means that the vaccine, if they are in the emergency use listing, they are available for global procurement by global procurement agency, like for instance UNICEF, or as you heard from COVAX. There is a cooperation between WHO that provides policy guidance, but also the prioritization and the research and development, and also helps with implementation of vaccine, of CEPI, that is upstream, that basically works with the company on innovation, on how to basically develop the vaccine. Gavi, that deals, first of all, is a secretariat also of COVAX, but also deals with the contract with the manufacturers pre-approval of the EUL, but also following the approval, and allows to have a bulk of vaccine at a lower price. So in terms of long-term sustainability and also affordability is a major issue. And then also UNICEF, that tremendously helps with the delivery, but also with the implementation of vaccine. So right now, since December 31st, we have several vaccines that are part of the EUL, emergency use listing. Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. A couple of weeks ago in May, also Sinopharm has been approved as part of the EUL. And under an advanced phase of evaluation is also Sinovac, another Chinese vaccine, and Sputnik 5. And then there are many more that are at different stage of evaluation by the EUL. The more vaccine you have in the EUL, the bigger is the pool of vaccines available for distribution.
Mm-hmm. What's the role of World Health Organization in population immunization in the region and Bosnia and Herzegovina?
As I said, we set the bar very high in terms of vaccine production of COVID, because generally it takes about 10 years to produce such vaccine. And if you think that 1 year into the pandemic, we had already the vaccine produced and distributed by COVAX, but also by other mechanisms. So ensuring that you have a safe and effective vaccine is a major contribution from WHO, but also the international community. And another aspect is that this is a global problem, so you need a global solution to it. And so that's why solidarity in vaccine distribution is a major issue. And we know that at the beginning, what happened was that there was a shortage of supply. But this is logical, because if you think in general that producing a vaccine is not an easy matter. It requires a lot of know-how, it requires a technology. Generally, any given year in the world, about between 3 and 5 billion vaccines are produced. These are for measles, diphtheria, pneumococcus, meningitis, and so on and so forth. Then the pandemic came along, and you need double the number of the global population. So it's 6-7 billion people. You need around 14, let's put it less, but around 10-11 billion vaccine in excess of what generally they produce. So the scope is already immense, and that needs to be appreciated, because generally not much consideration is given to this aspect. And of course, there is a global shortage of supply, and what happened is that, especially at the beginning, some countries concentrated on buying a lot of vaccine.
You said we don't have enough vaccines for the 2021. And on the other hand, you have a couple of countries that buy a lot of vaccines, so there is no equality globally when it comes to vaccination. Now, regarding this, what are the most common challenges of developing countries such as Bosnia and Herzegovina regarding the population immunization?
First of all, I think that it doesn't have much to do with the vaccine. Bosnia and Herzegovina, in terms of also COVAX, is a self-financing country, and the terms of developing a resource constraints, I don't think that match very well what is the situation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Mm-hmm. In fact, is a country that has the capacity to buy the vaccine. I like to focus on present and future rather than the past, because we know that the past there has been definitely a shortage of supply, and I want to re-emphasize the role of solidarity. Just over the last maybe 2 weeks, even less, there have been pledges by countries that had quite a lot of vaccine, of sharing the vaccines. And it was the first one of 80 million doses from the US administration on May 17, and Germany 30 million doses, and I think it's 1 week ago. France followed suit, Switzerland, and many others. I think that right now, over the last 2 weeks, the big made pledges for 180 million doses to be shared. Mm-hmm. Now, what is important that these doses are shared first, because what we recommend right now is that once in your countries you achieve the most vulnerable, the elderly, and the healthcare workers, you share the doses. Because unless everybody goes at the same pace, the world is not safe. Everybody talks about immunity, about the role of the vaccination in this process. What matters is that we go at the same pace, because even if one country is fully vaccinated, but another country is not, the virus still circulates in that country. Mutation can occur, which means variants, and those variants might escape the vaccine. So you start all over the game. So it's not a charity issue. It has a very strong epidemiological reasoning, and it has a very strong economic reasoning, because unless all the economies advance together and recover together, you cannot really have just one economy to go unless you close yourself up. Because what we learned from this virus is that it crosses all borders, and it's really a global one. So what really matters right now is that 1 month ago nobody was talking about, is about those sharing, or countries were not pledging about, so that these pledges translate into action, and translate into action with the equity approach, in the sense that, again, everybody has to go at the same pace, and that should be the leading motive. COVAX is one of these mechanisms to sharing the doses, even your domestic doses, or the ones that you want to share through the COVAX mechanism. And everybody will benefit, because even if these doses, they go to those countries that they cannot afford the vaccine, they enter into the pool that is going to be redistributed. So every country will reach the 20% of the vaccination quota much faster. This is really a principle that is crucial, and I think that what it's also really needed to be highlighted is that we have a different mechanism for accessing a vaccine. As far as equity is ensured, I think that we have to use all of them for the reaching and increasing vaccination coverage.
What are the next steps? What are the estimates?
Estimates for the pandemic?
Out in Bosnia and
let me somehow having another conversation, because what we know is that the measures that we discussed, that the individual measure and the public health measure, works. What we know is definitely vaccines are a very powerful tool to reduce mortality and severe forms, and they might have they have an impact on transmission, but the impact on the overall transmission is not known. What we know is that countries' vaccination rates have to go at the same pace. What we know is what it could be the individual role to end the pandemic or to control the pandemic. And this is, I think, is what is also very important for the population to be aware of. It's not that the vaccine will provide the solution to everything. We don't know yet. So that's why it's to highlight this aspect. And another aspect that, since you're asking me about the future, and since the topic of this talk is diplomacy, is the role that vaccine diplomacy will play. And I'm talking about dose sharing. Mm-hmm. There will be, in this regional context, a major surplus of vaccines of countries that they bought a lot. And so that's why vaccine diplomacy and respecting equity will play a major role in the redistribution of vaccine between countries that are more advanced in terms of rates and countries that are not behind, because it's not true that this is a race, because until everybody is vaccinated, nobody is winning. But that is where the diplomacy can take a role. And again, there has been various mechanisms for bringing vaccines to the country. COVAX was one, the EU mechanism is another one. The solidarity by countries that donated, Serbia was the first on March 2nd, needs to be acknowledged, like Turkey, like China, and future pledges by other countries. But the role that health diplomacy can play in the future for redistributing the surpluses of doses definitely will play a major issue. And talking about diplomacy, I think that what this COVID brought up in terms of importance is health. That now is at the center of the political debate. It's at the center of the country debate just because there is COVID. But what he highlighted is that we have really to reconceptualize the role of health in the development agenda of the country in Bosnia and Herzegovina, like everywhere else. We need to reconceptualize that health is not just Ministry of Health. We have to really rethink how to place health at the center of the economic policies. And this is what we would like to do with the counterpart and the WHO that we are working on also with the regional office to look also at communalities across the Balkan countries on where you can be stronger together. One area could be procurement. For instance, not only of vaccine, but also think of cancer drugs, of countries that are small and they have very little bargaining power. If they are together, they have a much bigger bargaining. Since the topic of this conversation is diplomacy, it's not only vaccine diplomacy, it's really how we can reconceptualize health diplomacy and have people and communicators and policymakers who don't deal with health to talk about health and not just COVID, because really the economy starts from health.
Thank you for this conversation. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Mahi. It was my pleasure.